I would say all Fortune 500 companies today use LangChain, the framework. I would say, maybe 80 to 90% use LangGraph.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, I think we're up to 45 to 50% of Fortune 500
Yeah.
customers using LangSmith platform, but a commercial customer. Pace in AI is much different than it was in cloud. If I were to kind of ratio them, if you will, I would say that AI is probably 50x faster than it was at Hashi. When OpenAI went into the court order of that, they could no longer delete data of those who consumed, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So now came this whole position around companies actually building their own enterprise GPT. One that I can speak about is Toyota, for instance, is a big customer of ours, right? They built their own enterprise GPT with LangGraph.
Yeah.
And so that around that is saying, hey, do I want to continuously give my data back to the model providers, or could I build, my own enterprise GPT with something like LangGraph and own all of it? The biggest thing here is that, memory is the new gold.
So today I sat down with Vince Signori, who's the director of sales at LangChain, which is building the entire stack for the agent development lifecycle. So that's building agents, evaluating them, improving them, and so much more. They were probably the first Gen AI company that I can think of when they released their open source RAG product, just as ChatGPT released. Vince was the third go-to-market person at LangChain after a decade at HashiCorp, where they did the same thing, but for the cloud. In this episode, we talk a lot about their go-to-market strategy and why AI companies seemingly grow revenue so much faster than other companies. Hint, it's not as sustainable as people say it is. Why the shift happening with AI right now is so similar to the shift to cloud a decade ago, and where companies are actually getting value out of with AI agents. Let's get into it. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Vince. Can you tell us about your background?
Yeah, happy to do it. I guess for those that don't know me, I'm Vince Signori. Background is in cloud infrastructure and now into AI infrastructure. So started back in 2016 at a small company called HashiCorp. Had a ton of mentors along the way and started as the first sales hire there, which then grew into an IPO and ultimately bought by IBM, and then joined another small company, LangChain. The same parallels and to the same shift as HashiCorp was the biggest shift to cloud, and LangChain as the biggest shift into AI and getting agents into production, and been at LangChain now for 2 years running the West Coast sales team.
Yeah. Why did you decide to move from HashiCorp to LangChain? Like, how did it even come across you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of my mentors, Rob Abbott, one of the best operators I know, he was the SVP of sales at Hashi, basically talked to me about how over time you figure out where you position at a company. And so there's people that position from, say, 0 to 100 ARR, 100 to 250, 250 to 500, and so on. When you go through the maturation of a company like HashiCorp and the different segments or milestones of that company, you start to figure out, are you a builder, right? Are you kind of in that mid-build, or then are you at this very corporate structure, right? Small accounts and do those types of things. At my core, right, I'm a 0 to 250. And so I want to get back into the building phase where, you have a ton of influence, but you're also working with, groundbreaking software, very much forward thinking and helping companies realize value, because in the manner that we work in is very prescriptive. Right. These are new things to everyone and we're supposed to be the experts. And so that was the reason for leaving. But I, was reached out to by many and certainly landed at LangChain, which I think is a fantastic company.
Yeah. Obviously, you said earlier that there's a lot of parallels between HashiCorp and LangChain. Could you explain that?
Yeah. So I think there were two moments or parallel moments that are happening, right? So the first moment at HashiCorp was all around software development lifecycle, right? How do I move my applications to the cloud? How do I, in the way of like provision them, being with Terraform at HashiCorp, or secure them with Vault, or connect all the applications with Console, right? Or monitor them in the way of Nomad. And so that whole software development lifecycle was key, because it was really about how do I build a foundational workflow so that I can continuously, in a very organized chaos way, move applications to the cloud. Right. And what ended up happening during that period is AWS at one point in time around 2015 owned about 95% of the total market share of cloud. And then obviously, Google and Azure started to come up and take market share away. That then started this multi-cloud approach, right? You had to service different customers of different clouds. And to do that, if you were to use the native tooling that the cloud providers would provide, right, you would ultimately have 3 different products, right, that weren't talking to one another and they're different windows, et cetera. So how do you actually create a more of a horizontal platform across all 3 of those clouds so you get one single pane of glass, but you can work on all 3? Right at the same time. And so that was really the genesis and the core of HashiCorp. It was the fact that I could leverage either on-prem or like private cloud, data center, or as well as AWS, GCP, right, IBM, Oracle, et cetera, with a single pane of glass with one tool. And that was really the beauty of HashiCorp. In the same way that LangChain is doing now, think of the clouds in the HashiCorp analogy to now what model providers are. right? So model providers like Anthropic, OpenAI have all native solutions, right? But they require you to leverage those models, right? And so what we do is we provide that horizontal platform, allowing you to use any hyperscaler. So we're agnostic hyperscaler, or we're agnostic in the way of the different models you use, and certainly and then frameworks as well. We build our own frameworks, but you can also leverage different frameworks. So I think it's the key of how do we build a foundational workflow and then allow you to bring in new technologies over time rather than tying you into, if you will, vendor lock, right, with a specific model provider.
Yeah. When HashiCorp started, was it providing the infrastructure or was it the open source tools like Terraform?
Yeah, the open source tools were the key, right?
Okay.
So different model between HashiCorp and LangChain. HashiCorp directly made a competitive solution to its enterprise. So the open source fundamentally, you could take and build scaffolding on top of and create an enterprise-like version, where then the enterprise version of, say, Terraform or Vault, right, would have some key areas. For instance, like Vault was like performance replication. That would be a very hard thing to DIY, but we could provide it. I think then with LangChain, it's an open source and closed source company, but in the open source are just the frameworks, right? So it's where you build the agents. So you get all the way up to where you've built the agent, but then once you've built it, you need to test it, you need to deploy it, and you need to monitor it. And that's where then the closed source enterprise solutions come in.
Okay. So we've talked about LangChain a little bit. Could you explain the business? What is LangChain and maybe like where it started and how it's evolved until today?
Yeah. So it started about a month before ChatGPT. Harrison Chase created LangChain, right? The open source framework that took off, right? It had its viral moment.
I remember using it for, I think it was RAG at the very beginning. Yeah,
exactly. And so many of the Fortune 500 companies took it, right? And saw it as, if you will, like the golden brick road of like, okay, here's how I go and build RAG agents. What then came out of that was building LangGraph, which is an agent orchestrator. So helping you to build very custom agents, low level. So you have all this control. And then to where now we are at with deep agents, right? So long running agents that are doing, very long research, and we can do asynchronous to allow each of them to run at individual time. And then to where what was born is LangSmith, right? So LangSmith platform being the observability, evaluation, prompt engineering, deployments, and then on top of that our no-code solution, Fleet. So Fleet is for all the business users to build in a chat functionality way so that they can build agents simply within natural language, right?
Yeah. So there was at least from my perspective, there's like a big gap between you guys started with the RAG solutions and then going to like building agents, because I feel like there was a year where the agents just weren't there yet. It's basically been like the last 12 months, I feel like, where the agents have really like taken off. Do you agree or disagree with that? And then like what were you guys doing in that time period? Was it just growing the open source product? Like what was going on there?
Yeah. So, I mean, agents definitely have taken off now.
Yeah.
And so I think there's two different types, right? I think you're seeing obviously a lot of voice agents coming about right now. I think a lot of companies started with internal agents. So more like a IT help desk, HR help desk agent. That would be like a master agent that could facilitate documentation review across maybe like Salesforce or Jira or, like HR Workday, right? Whatever it may be. And I think internal was the easiest for many of these companies to start because you controlled the blast radius, right? So LangChain was kind of like, okay, let's build that RAG agent. And then to where LangGraph came out, and LangGraph was all about like, how do I build this custom agent? And then it's like, okay, what if I built an external agent, right? So now many of our customers are building external facing agents that are mission critical, right? Productionized, revenue generating agents, right? So no longer a cost center, now becoming a revenue generator.
Yeah. What is LangGraph? Like how is it, like what are some actual use cases that enterprises are using it for?
Yeah. So LangGraph, I think the biggest one that you see a lot of is like concierge. Yeah. So Home Depot, for instance, they have one, I think it's called Blue Apron, that's on their website. So it's all about concierge, like L'Oreal as well. So recommendations, what you should buy, look at some of your past history of purchase, right? Maybe you bought this in the past. This also goes well with it. Yeah. This is what other people are buying. So concierge is big, retail specifically. Yeah. I think you also see ones that are even in like, furthermore, like customer support. So like people in customer support that are having an agent listen to the phone call and then providing them feedback on here's where maybe you should go, a recommendation or whatnot. So those I think are some of the key ones. And then now where I think it's going is voice, right? Yeah. So voice ultimately is the next step of this, where you'll have, you'll be calling in, you see companies like Sierra, for instance, if you call Sutter Health, Like before this, like I told you I had the hernia surgery.
Yeah.
I called Sutter Health. It was a Sierra agent picking up, right? And then to push me to a human.
Nice.
So they take first triage, right? Then it moves to a human. And so I think you'll see more things like that with LangGraph.
Yeah.
Which is why we're making big.
Yeah. So, and LangSmith is like an eval product.
Yeah. So LangSmith platform is really the whole genesis around like why even the agentic development lifecycle was built. Like fundamentally, you build your agent in code, right? Open source. And then how do you test it, right? So you have to go about and test it, to run evaluations against it, battle test it, then get it into where you can deploy it in a repeatable manner with, patterned ways, and then to where you monitor it, right, over time, and you're doing the observability and whatnot. So you have different components. You have observability, evaluations, deployments, prompt management, and then now Engine, which is an agent that we came out with at our conference Interrupt on May 13th, 14th. And this is all about how do I take you out of the trace and actually put you into a different screen called Engine. Engine fundamentally spinning this flywheel faster than an engineer can. And so that you wake up every day as an engineer, you go into LangSmith and no longer look at, the trillions of traces that you have, but rather the single pane of glass of like, where do I actually need to spend my time? So what are the recommendations or improvements or maybe different evaluators I should build or prompts? And so that screen is highly beneficial because it allows you to simplify where you need to spend your time, right? And allow the agent to do more of the, hands-on work.
Yeah.
Even while you're asleep.
So it's a product for engineers.
Correct.
Okay. So an engineer, like, what do they do today? And like, could you explain how exactly Engine is kind of, taking a lot of that work off of their
absolutely.
plate?
So I think you see a lot of engineers today that they'll go in, obviously they'll hook up tracing to an agent, right? So they'll see all the traces come in. So they're setting up production-based evaluations. So that could be either custom heuristic evaluators, built in Python or TypeScript that are custom to their business, right, or organization. Then you could see ones like LM as a judge, right, another LM judging another LM. And then where you would have to bring, say, for instance, like an SME or PM in, right, to score against it.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people don't trust LMs, so why would you trust two LMs, right? Judging one another.
Like compounding the errors.
Exactly. And so we have what we call an annotation queue where we invite the PMs and SMEs to come in and actually score against, either in like a binary fashion 0-1 or on a 1-10 scale. But they can provide a lot of the content and context because they're understanding the product and the outputs they want. But then you would also have the engineer within the prompt management, right? So actually building the prompts and iterating on them because each prompt has to be different for each model, right? So you build model-based prompts because if you were to swap models out, each prompt wouldn't work. You get a different answer, probably not to what your liking is.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this can be done to where you're running these evaluators, you have the scoring mechanism, you have the prompts built, where Engine can go stick on top of it and say, hey, this evaluator, maybe you should switch it out. Maybe you should do this different in a prompt. Maybe you should iterate on your prompt here, right? So instead of you actually being like in the trenches, now step back to the 10,000 foot view and get a single pane of glass of recommendations or improvements, right, that you can make rather than you being, if you will, with the shovel in the trenches, actually doing the work or figuring out what needs to be changed.
Okay. So it's like a meta tool on top of everything that's kind of orchestrating.
Exactly.
Okay. Cool. Interesting. Could you explain the agent engineering lifecycle? So that's kind of like one big thing that you guys are going after right now. What is it? How is it different from software engineering lifecycle?
Yeah, it's very similar actually.
Yeah.
I mean, there's direct parallels and as talked about with HashiCorp, that was, the bloodline of the company, right? Was the software development lifecycle. And it's the same way within LangChain because what you're trying to do is as quickly as possible, move agents to production, right? And the beauty of that is, right, is building them as fast as possible. The problem is, what steps along the way do you skip? And so if you develop the agent development lifecycle that, we've subscribed to and built those core values into our open source products and as well as enterprise, it allows you in a very formalized way, right, to set a plan, a strategic plan, allowing you to build out the foundation of how you want to bring agents to production and then insert new technologies over time. And so I think what we saw a lot of in the beginning were board level directives of where, companies were told to bring in AI or build agents, right? And so it was this massive flush of, buying software, buying different models, frontier models, et cetera. And then to where, hey, I have now 6-7 different vendors and what is my actual strategy, right? Where what we subscribe to and what we're positioning as is ADLC, which effectively is all around build, test, deploy, and monitor, right? Within that, all around is the governance layer of it, right? And so what we're saying is that, hey, build in the open source, use our open source frameworks, right? LangChain, LangGraph, deep agents. Once you've done that and you feel like you have a quality agent, you need to go test it, right? Test it on the data sets, test the, use evaluators and go through all those different type of evaluations. And once you've done that, now you're ready to deploy, right? So you'd use LangSmith deployments to deploy to production, allowing you to select different API endpoints. Maybe you want to, deploy as well an MCP server, right? Or something of that sort. And then to where you ultimately monitor it, right? As it's in production, you want to make sure that you're getting the correct responses, especially if it's external, right? There's things you definitely care about. You want accuracy, zero latency, and the cost is probably not an issue because it's the bloodline of your revenue. Whereas internal, right, cost is a big thing. You want to lower your cost, don't really care about the latency, but accuracy has to be number one. And so I think once you have all that, it's like, great, now I've built this pattern, right? A very strategic pattern of how I can build, test, deploy, and monitor these agents. Now, fundamentally, how do I wrap this with governance or guardrails so that I can decide, what models people use, what's the cost of the total model if they're allowed to use it, what agent can iterate or work with different data sources, or what human can work with that agent. And so then I think the govern component of it as well is very key. And once you have this foundation, this allows you to have that organized chaos, right? Organized chaos without the foundation is chaos, not organized, right? So the key is, how do we build out that entire workflow? And then over time, bring in any models, bring in any hyperscaler, bring in any frameworks. You don't have to use our own, but that's the core of it, right? Without a foundation, you really don't have a plan. And then to where I think we'll talk about this in a little bit is where you see some consolidation in the amount of vendors that customers have bought.
Yeah. Actually, like back to the previous point that we were making. So you mentioned that like voice agents are really big right now.
Yep.
And then also that I think what product was it that does the customer service
Sierra.
chatbots? Yeah. So Sierra does that. There's like Decagon. There's like some of these, like Intercom, for example. A lot of these guys are in the customer service space. Obviously, like that's one of the hit products of like Gen AI. So are you competing with them, or are they using you? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So we have customers so they would be more of like the pre-built voice agent, right? So depending on if you want to build something more custom, right, then you would use LangGraph and build something super custom to you, or you can have the out of box, right? Out of box being the Sierras, the Decagons, et cetera. We have customers that use it and then trace LangSmith with it, right? So they'll leverage Sierra and then they'll want to trace, I want to trace a Sierra agent or a Decagon agent, but I also want to trace, a LangGraph agent, or maybe, an agent built on vanilla Python, right? And that's the beauty of it, is that you have that optionality with our product. So do we compete against another? No. And we work very well together. I think the basis is of the different types of agents that you use. If it's Decagon, if it's Sierra, if it's our frameworks or other frameworks, you want one solution as a horizontal platform to give you the same output or same metrics. So you always have a way of baseline that you're testing against, right? Whereas if you were to use different solutions for observability or tracing, whatever it may be, where you really don't have any baseline of what you can test against. And so this gives you, a pretty key way of like inviting new technologies. And I'm sure there's going to be new ones that come out, right? I think we see a new product every week. We actually have a channel that kind of follows a lot of this, and it's every week or every day. There's something else. So we'll play nice with everyone.
Yeah, makes sense. I guess, so someone would want to use LangGraph and just like the LangChain products to build voice agents. Maybe like one reason would be they're not as big of an enterprise and they want that control, or maybe they are a big company and they do want that control. So like, I guess what I'm trying to say is using a Decagon, Sierra, like all these companies, it is black box, like you were saying. And so it's basically, do you want the control or do you not want the control? Do you want to like hand it off over to them? Is that basically like the decision factor?
That's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
I think in the beginning it was like get agents as quick as possible. And I think that was a great solution. Like you had pre-built out of box ready to go. And I think that's fantastic. Like I still think it's relevant. And I think as you see people get to the more external agent, especially those who are, worrisome around like PII and whatnot. And who want to own, if you will, the IP of that agent. Those are the ones that are using LangGraph, right? Because fundamentally it's open source. You can create your own, if you will, version of it, build your agent, and then it can be, right, so-and-so's agent, for whatever purpose it may be. But that custom control allows you to change any parameters or base it on any metrics that are important to you.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I've seen the same thing. I feel like there's a lot of companies that are like, oh, we don't want to send any data over to AWS, OpenAI, Anthropic, whatever. Even if they're using Bedrock or any of these, they're still like, oh, I still don't trust it for some reason.
Yeah. There was a big push, and I'm sure you paid attention to this. When OpenAI went into the court order of that, they could no longer delete data of those who consumed, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So now came this whole position around companies actually building their own enterprise GPT. One that I can speak about is Toyota, for instance, is a big customer of ours, right? They built their own enterprise GPT with LangGraph.
Yeah.
And so that around that is saying, hey, do I want to continuously give my data back to the model providers, which assumption is they're training on it or whatnot, right? They're not deleting it, so they're doing something with it. Or could I build, my own enterprise GPT with something like LangGraph and own all of it, right?
Yeah.
The biggest thing here is that, memory is the new gold, right? So what you fundamentally want to have is you want to have your memory, right? You want to own the memory because the memory is giving you all the positions of, if you're in retail, who's bought what, who's consumed what, right? It's all of that purchase history. It's all of the, times that the agent works with someone or remembers everything, if it's long-term or short-term.
Yeah.
And so memory is definitely the new gold, especially if you're looking at something like SanDisk or Micron. I think the market has told you as such.
Yeah. Also, like on the point of companies training their own models, have you heard of like Kirkland and Ellis spending $500 million?
I have.
Oh,
I have.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't have too many thoughts on it. I think it's definitely a position. There's a lot of companies that want to do things like this, and it's more of, let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
And I think, I give credit to them for taking a risk and seeing how it works, but I guess I'll leave it at time will tell.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I feel like early on, like very early on, was it Bloomberg that trained their own model? They were like one of the first, I feel.
Yep.
They spent a lot of money on that, and it didn't seem like it went anywhere, but I'm sure it's been a couple years, so they've probably learned a lot. So Kirkland,
no question.
Yeah, probably figure it out.
It'll be interesting. I mean, I think also, open source models are going to become more prevalent, and that's probably where they're looking as well. I like to see where it goes. I think it'll be a short period of time before they figure it out. It probably won't take even a year.
Yeah.
Right. To where they see if it's a good or bad decision.
Yeah. So I had a question. So with these big companies, is it normally that they start out with the open source version of LangChain or any of the products, and then you see some type of behavior that you're like, oh, these guys should get upsold into like our closed source product?
Yeah.
Like, how does that work?
With both companies, HashiCorp and LangChain, that's exactly how it happens.
Okay.
Right. So open source that is key. For those that have never sold an open source, especially specifically in the West Coast, it's the hardest sale in the history of software, right? Because you're fundamentally competing against yourself. From the standpoint of HashiCorp, we had open source Terraform. It competed directly with the enterprise. So you had to create some type of, product value, right? Not only product value, technical value, but as well, like outcome driven value, that the enterprise, along with the partnership and support and services, right, would allow you to upsell from open source into the enterprise. And the unique thing about LangChain is that, yes, you start with the open source, right? You build agents, the first iteration of that being LangChain, and then into LangGraph, where we see a lot of, building and now deep agents, which similar to something like, Anthropic's managed agents, similar to something like that. And so we see a lot of people building there. I think what happens is people hit certain pain points, right, along the way. They may not feel it if you're building one agent, but as you start to build 50, 100, thousands of agents, how much of this process is repeatable? Can you standardize any part of it, right? And then do you actually have any control, right? Do you have any guardrails around who's accessing what or who's building what or where it's being built? So I think kind of to my earlier point, as companies rush to bring in vendors and buy all these things, ultimately what happened is you increase your blast radius for a security vulnerability without any understanding of what governance was put in place, of who had access to what, to either being the agent having access to particular data sources or a human having access to an agent that granted them access to data sources.
Yeah.
Or what you're seeing, for instance, like Uber, right? Using all of their AI spend because of, leveraging Anthropic, right? Claude. And so would an LM gateway work well there, right? We just came out with one on May 13th, 14th, where you could actually restrict the access to particular models and say, hey, maybe for internal, let's use open source models or, a lesser cost model.
Yeah.
And so I think things like that, help restrict and help facilitate the build of agents, but also do it, if you will, bowling with bumpers or swimming lanes, right, that are appropriate.
So I think, was it recently, 2023, that HashiCorp changed their license for their open source product?
BSL. business software license.
What is that?
So they did that. Let's see. I think they did that 2022, 2023, effectively stating that if you're leveraging the open source for creating revenue for X entity or organization, that you had to pay, right? You had to pay HashiCorp for that.
Like they have like a list of companies.
Yeah. So if you
have to pay,
if you leverage the open source to fundamentally drive revenue to your business, like either you had to stop the use of it or you had to basically pay HashiCorp. And so that was because of the direct competition between open source and enterprise, which you don't see at something like LangChain.
Okay. Why is that?
The model is just, it's just different. And I think that's why I was more open to going. I think the model of HashiCorp was very difficult. Like you're at its core, you're competing against yourself, right? So many customers, especially on the West Coast, built out, different versions or scaffolding on the enterprise that directly competed against the enterprise that we were selling, right? And so no one wants to hear that their baby's ugly. Right. So that's one piece of it. But there's definitely things around supporting it, maintaining it, right? You have a forked version, you could be 10 versions behind.
Yeah.
Right. And so are you actually getting the full totality of value, right? Whereas the enterprise could have that and we, run it either on our infrastructure or help maintain it, right, et cetera. Here is that you build all the agents in the open source. We then give you the enterprise capabilities to, test it, deploy it, monitor it. Obviously, all the things we talked about with Engine and now SmithDB, right, our new database, helping you to work, with scale. We work with 5 of the, Fortune 10. I think we're up to about 45% of the Fortune 500. So massive scale, big organizations, ones that many of us use today or see. And so I think that is a huge key, kind of a difference. And the last thing I'll say too, is that when you become, for instance, a customer of LangChain in an enterprise fashion, we wrap enterprise support on the open source. We help you fundamentally build the agents in open source.
Interesting.
So it's a way different model.
Yeah. And also, I think you guys are starting to hire FTEs. Is that right?
We are.
Yeah. Why is that?
And you mean forward deploy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So forward deploy, because I think a lot of times that what is happening is a lot of the people are now, and this is kind of the key around the ADLC, is that roles in organizations are the biggest part of it, actually. Who are the appropriate people that I need for each layer, right?
Yeah.
That being infrastructure, right? Like, how do I set up the infrastructure? Is it the same people that did cloud? Do I just move them over to AI or building agents, right? As the experts, we've been doing this now for 3 years, right? We have that ability to be not only consultative, but also prescriptive and stating like, hey, we work with all these industry leading companies, right? Forward thinking companies. And we work with, 20 to 30 to 40 of them on a daily basis, right? I'm speaking from the West Coast specifically.
Yeah.
And so I can take all the learnings of all those and say, hey, this is what we believe is the standardized practice or best practice.
Yeah.
So by bringing in a forward deployed engineer, they can then help actually hands on keyboard build that, right?
Yeah.
Either by staff augmentation, right? Or directly building the agents for them or building side by side with them.
Yeah. What is the future of that going to look like at LangChain? Because that was very recent, right? That was like within the last month. So are you going to use that as a way to sell a customer? I'm assuming that's one reason why they would want to work with LangChain. Hey, we have these forward deployed engineers. I guess what you were just saying where, hey, these guys work with a bunch of companies.
Yeah, it's a great point. So I would say, at LangChain, we don't just want to sell you software.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of companies that want to just do that.
Yeah.
The reality is, right, we want a successful partnership. And the only way of doing that is actually providing not only like customer centric, account management, but it is also like, how can we, provide services that actually allow you to realize value.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not the support to where, hey, things come up, right? You go down or whatever it is, right? There's a bug. It's how can we actually create value and a successful outcome by helping you to build an agent, right? And getting that agent into production and making sure it gets used. How do we train your people on all of our tools, right? So we can have people that when we first come in there, right, there's different layers of education or starting points of these people. How do we get them all to the same level playing field? Right?
Yeah.
You're going to have experts on every team, but how do we up level each of those individuals, right? By giving them the proper training, the proper enablement, ensuring that they actually get value out of the tools. And so that's just the difference, right? We really don't want to be selling any products that someone just wants the product and doesn't want to be enabled or trained on, or even bring in like our PS org, right? To help to what you were stating, right? Build agents or even, implement, right? The infrastructure behind say, a self-hosted version of the product. And so that I think is the difference of us is we want to be fully hands-on, right? So it is of the epitome of a strategic partner.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is a hot take, but For me, I feel like it's so hard to just build a software company from this point on. Like to just build like a software product. Like it's so easy to copy it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, I think it was it Mark Cuban or something of that? He was saying that there'll eventually be a single person $1 billion company. Right. And for the reason of using like Claude to build an agent and then, or build a piece of software, right? For instance, and that would be the revenue generation. Yeah. I think it's key. I think the biggest thing that's key is the type of people that you bring in. I think you see a lot of companies that are out there that are pulling from, some of the old guards, like either the ServiceNows or the Snowflakes, and bringing that type of mentality into new companies. Over time, you're still going to have, software, which I agree with, like Jensen came out, like software's not dead. It's going to constantly be something that's going to be used. I think now in the stock market, it's being realized. A lot of those like ServiceNow and so forth are going back up for that reason. Ultimately software is built by people. And yes, sure, you can build components of it and whatnot, with like Claude and so forth, but you really need to have at the end of the day, people that are helping to, oversee it and help build it. And so what we try to do is actually empower the engineer. Like we don't want to replace the engineer, right? We want to empower that engineer or developer. Like how can we help, create some automation and say some of the, manual tasks that you do every day, right? How can we take you out of that constant thing you do every day and just automate it? So now you can focus on higher priority, maybe revenue generating projects, right? And so that's really our focus is, bringing in something like Engine, taking you out of the trillions of traces and actually giving you the needle in the haystack, right? And showing you those 5 needles within the trillions of haystacks that are out there.
Yeah. So let's shift the conversation more to go-to-market now.
Yep.
So when you say, I guess you started at LangChain in go-to-market, now you're a sales director.
Yep.
What did go-to-market look like when you first joined? Also, when did you join?
So I'm 2 years in August.
Okay.
So I joined as a sales rep. I was a third sales rep.
Yeah. So what does it look like with 3 sales reps at LangChain?
Yeah. So in the very beginning, which was crazy. So I remember before I joined, I sat down with Harrison Chase, CEO of LangChain, and I had the great privilege of working with 2 really outstanding founders at HashiCorp, right? Alman Dadgar and Mitchell Hashimoto. And so really brilliant people, but were willing to do anything it took to get it done. And so learning from them and being able to work with them and the empathy they had and, the respect they had for their craft and the respect they had for my craft really allowed me to understand how you work with a founder, right? So I want to start there as a first and foremost. The discussion with Harrison was simply around, right, if I can come in, I need a couple things, right? We need to be traveling a lot. We need to go see customers in person. We need to make sure that, right, there's a relationship built with a physical handshake. Mm-hmm. And the second was about all the meetings that we have, I need him on, right? We have to be able to work with someone like Harrison, who is very much a celebrity in the space, and ensure that, right, our customers understand that, right, he's a part of this process. It's not us just being, salespeople and whatnot and trying to sell something. This is a top-down collective on how we are going to go about and build a very strategic partnership with you, stand behind it. In fact, Harrison, our CEO and co-founder, is going to be right there, right? And so in the beginning of it, when it started, it was 3 of us. So there were 2 before me, and it was 20-hour days, and it was 30 to 40 calls a day. And I remember because it was during the time that I had my first child. And so she was a terrible sleeper. And so I said, hey, if she can't sleep, I can't sleep. I might as well work. Yeah. Right. And so I worked 20 hours a day for a whole year, and including weekends. Did about 8 to 11 on the weekends, and that was all outbound on Saturdays. And then I worked 20-hour days, Monday through Friday, and took about 30 to 40 meetings a day. Some of those, net new calls, some of those like demos, some of those POCs, some of those negotiation, procurement calls. So it was definitely a challenging time, but I think, the blessing I had is I had a great mentorship. I mentioned him already. Rob Abbott really taught me a lot at HashiCorp and like how to be a salesperson and how to like create relationships and really help customers, get value. And so once you understand that, it becomes a lot easier, right? Yeah. But yeah, that's how it started to then where now I've been in the director role running, right, the West Coast sales team for 2 quarters, going on my 3rd. We've been the #1 region at the company. So we've been doing very well for the last 2 quarters. And, it's just a different muscle, right? Yeah. It's helping others, ensuring that they can get to their outcome and making sure that all of them are successful, right? We have a goal on our team, everyone at 200% annual, right? And
what does that mean?
So of their annual quota, we want them at
Oh, okay.
200%. The funny enough is it's probably too low. I think I have to edit that
Yeah.
just because of the way that these guys are. They're seasoned pros. They understand it. I think the one thing that reps would be challenged with today is pace. Pace in AI is much different than it was in cloud. If I were to kind of ratio them, if you will, I would say that AI is probably 50x faster than it was at Hashi.
Yeah.
And that's even me knowing kind of what's coming, if you
Yeah.
will. Cause like, at Hashi, like I learned all those things. I was able to see them in real time. And now with the parallels, like you see things coming, but it's just so much faster. And so that would be the one thing I would say, like, if someone were to struggle with something, pace would be, if you're not in AI yet,
Yeah.
right? Pace would be definitely something you would struggle with.
Yeah. So also, first of all, like what's the size of the sales team now?
Yeah. So let's see, when I joined, it was 3.
Yeah.
Right. The company was 39 employees, 39, 40.
Mostly engineers.
Mostly engineers.
Yeah.
Now we're about 250, 260 will be probably 500, 600 end a year. So hyper growth. I mean, I think we just moved into gosh, time flies. So don't test me on this, but I think it was 4 months ago, we moved into the place. Now we're already going to another one with 2 different floors.
Oh,
That's
wow.
how fast we're growing, right? So it's hyper growth. The sales team now, I want to say we're around like 60, 70.
That's for the West?
No,
Okay.
as a total,
Okay.
right? So somewhere around there. West Coast specifically, we're around 14, 15 and growing. So, think of some of the biggest accounts you can think of, those publicly, like, NVIDIA, Cisco, right? Some that I can talk about, others I can't. But yeah, some of the biggest accounts in the world, some of the tech forward accounts, some of the hardest companies to sell to. As you think of that engineer base that want to build like solutions.
Yeah. So you were mentioning that like early on when you just joined the sales team that Harrison had to join like all the calls. I'm assuming that's not the case anymore.
No, I can't scale.
Yeah. How was that transition?
And I don't want to make it a demand, but I think it was a request of mine.
Yeah.
And the reason for it is that, right, Arlen and Mitchell did the same thing.
Yeah.
And you could see because of the celebrity how it helped navigate the call.
Yeah. Why is that?
So I'm coming in as someone who's new to the company, right?
Yeah.
I have nothing that I've done that would provide them to trust me.
I see.
Right. But what they do trust are effectively the founders who created the technologies that they're consuming, right?
Yeah.
So there's the opportunity that happens on that call is one, let me show you what I've built. Tell me if it's good or not, right? That's like one view of it, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a way to say, hey, looks great. This is maybe where I would change it. And it's a trust building activity. And then to where, right, you maybe build a partnership around it that brings in a commercial entity. And the second is people going on and saying, hey, what do I even do? Where do I even start?
Yeah.
Right.
Who is the person you're getting on the calls with?
If Harrison's involved, it would be, executive level, C-level, SVPs, VPs, ensuring that we could build some type of executive alignment. I think at HashiCorp, we saw very quickly that you had to have what I call the sandwich sale. And so you build a groundswell with developers and engineers, and you did, understanding use cases and doing use case development and demos and POCs, but you really have to have, right, an executive alignment, especially with your founder and the C-level, CTOs, CIOs, CPOs, CDOs, being chief data officer, and make sure you have that alignment to then where eventually you can sandwich sell it to then where a platform team runs LangSmith platform in a horizontal way.
Yeah.
Those business units actually want to consume the software because it's a great developer experience.
Yeah.
Right. They're supported correctly. And then to where the platform team doesn't have to worry about rolling out a horizontal platform that no one would ever consume. Rather, it's something that's saying, hey, we'll roll this out because there's demand, right? The demand is coming from the developer and practitioner. And then of course, from the executive level, right? We're knocking down, KPIs or metrics or so forth that are being set forth in the annual presentation or 10K that their CIO or CEO is talking about. And so it's with that, that's where you can grow into, a very big partnership.
So that sandwich strategy was what you used at HashiCorp?
Yeah.
So how is that different or the same at
Identical.
LangChain? Okay.
I think what we've done at LangChain, like we brought over a lot of HashiCorp folks. And I think because of the direct parallels, right? Different verbiage, same theme.
Yeah.
And so with that same type of sale, I think it directly works. And that's very much like an open source strategy. Any company's in open source, I can only speak to HashiCorp, right? That was a direct position there and it works the same at LangChain.
So when you approach a company, they're already using LangChain?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I would say all Fortune 500 companies today use LangChain, the framework. I would say, maybe 80 to 90% use LangGraph.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, I think we're up to 45 to 50% of Fortune 500
Yeah.
customers using LangSmith platform with a commercial customer. So at the very beginning, yes, you could go in and not identify who's using it, but I think people are very proud of leveraging new technology. So LinkedIn, right? A lot of people on LinkedIn state either they get certified, right, by some of our academy trainings that are self-service and get certified for the use of LangChain or LangGraph or LangSmith, or they put it within their, titles or whatnot, because everyone right now is looking for people that they could hire into these different roles and organizations that have past experience with open source tooling. Obviously, in our case, right, that being LangChain and LangGraph.
Yeah.
So I think that's where you would see it as well, as like, okay, who are the experts, and then how can we help them?
Yeah.
Right? How can we up-level them? And so there's a piece of it is, as we can work with these people, really what can happen here in a personal way is getting them promoted, right? Helping them, empowering them, maybe getting them promoted helps pay for their kids' college, right? Maybe helps pay the house down.
Yeah.
And so we take real personal understanding of like how we can help these people, not only in their personal life, but as well in their career.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the vision that we have every time that we're engaging with someone, is like, how can we fundamentally help the company?
Yeah.
But really, like, how can we help that individual as well, right? Up level their career, but also, get something out of it from a personal perspective.
Has there ever been a case where you went to sell a company where they weren't already using one of the LangChain products?
Yep. Many times. Yeah, absolutely.
How does that sale differ from like the sandwich strategy sale?
Yeah. So I think the difference is obviously, one, if you're using our stuff, there's familiarity, right? And so I kind of coin it back to like outbound versus inbound. And so inbound, effectively, if someone comes in, right, they have already an understanding or a doubt about what you can and can't do, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't really have control of the narrative. Whereas if I were to outbound, I control the entirety of the narrative, right? I can effectively state what I want you to hear or listen to.
I see.
Or write and say, hey, it could be on LangChain, the company, or I could just talk about Engine, right? Or I could just talk about our new database, SmithDB, or just observability, right? And I can focus on those areas and then allowing me to, if you will, control the narrative. Whereas the same way, right? If you already have some predisposition against leveraging LangChain, which in its early infancy, because OpenAI was coming out with so many different things, that the team was basically, putting in breaking changes. So LangChain was out there, people had it in production. There wasn't any version control. It was breaking in prod, which then, people kind of rolled it back, and now we're moving forward. But that was kind of a narrative for a while. That was on like Hacker News and Reddit, right? For instance, obviously now version controlled and all that, not a problem. But that's kind of the difference, right? Is it's okay that you're not on it, and we're okay with it as well. You can use our products without it. Of course, I think some of the best customers that we have, right, leverage all of our open source and then the enterprise. And I think over time, people start to see, right, that like even for instance, LangChain is downloaded more times than the OpenAI SDK, right? So I think you start to look at the numbers and then go, hey, if I'm going to actually, work into the open source and start leveraging it, I should really look at the entirety of the ecosystem, right? It's first party support. We also, if you use our open source frameworks, we wrap enterprise support on it, right? So if you have any bugs, our enterprise support team that's 24/7 around the sun will respond to you.
Yeah.
And so that's very unique. We did not do that at HashiCorp, and that's very unheard of. So I don't know if it fully answered the question, but I think there's just difference of maybe preconceived notion. I've used it. This is kind of how it was, to then where, haven't heard about it, tell me about it, and allowing, the person in go-to-market to dictate the narrative.
Yeah. So two, I guess, somewhat related questions. You mentioned that at HashiCorp, one of the things that you guys learned was like to do whatever is required to make a sale. That sounds very like a little ominous. Like what are some of those things? And then maybe like what, so we already talked about like what things you took from HashiCorp and you're applying to the LangChain sales team. What things are you actively like avoiding?
That's a good question. I don't think I'm avoiding too much.
Okay.
I think
so it works pretty well.
I think a lot of them are directly connected. HashiCorp, I think, was key there, is that it had an unbelievable culture, right? The leadership was fantastic. You had trust in the full leadership. So all you had to focus on was your day-to-day, right? And it had very much a sell-out culture, right? All out, go for it. It wasn't in the way of like burnout, sell-out, right? But like, get your work done, make, like revenue is king, right? And figure out, there was always a saying of kind of like two things. There was Bobby in the lobby, which is a sales saying of like be in front of people, right? Like meet people, like don't sell over Zoom, like actually go and meet people, get in the lobby and try to get people down there to meet with them, And then there was also kind of a thing around like crazy Eddie deals, right? What does it take to bring a customer in, right? Let's figure out whatever that deal is and let's bring the customer in, right? So there's kind of that as well. That may have broken your pricing model a bit.
Oh, I see.
So, Crazy Eddie from, was it a National Lampoon or is it, I forget, Uncle Buck. So I think it was that one. But so I think that was a key one. And then I would say, for what we've brought over here, we sell in person. We travel. I was on a plane every other week in the first year of LangChain. There's questions I've asked around as we go to different areas. Like I was in Seattle for 3 days. I was down in Texas, and we were in the South Bay all last week doing a huge roadshow.
Yeah,
and you start to figure out from a lot of these companies that a lot of people aren't in person, right?
Yeah,
a lot of companies do not visit customers. It's the COVID Zoom fatigue, right? And so people are fatigued by it, but still selling via Zoom.
Yeah.
And so the biggest competitive advantage I think we have is that we go see people.
Yeah.
We're in person, we're shaking hands, doing dinners, right? And really building an in-person tangible relationship, not Zoom selling. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that is why we've been so successful, right, in our area.
Yeah. So back to the earlier question where you said that when you first started, Harrison had to be on the calls. So how do you scale now that you have 60 salespeople?
Yeah.
Like how do you sell now? Do you bring engineers with you on these trips? Like how does that work?
Yeah. So in the beginning, we leverage Harrison's celebrity to break in. As simple as do you want 10 minutes with Harrison? Simple as that.
Yeah.
And 90% hit right. And so then, okay, now you're X amount of, sales reps. You can't do that, right?
Yeah.
Harrison be burnt out. And we need to be able to build on your product. And so now go to market agent, right?
Yeah.
So all of it is built on, looking at customers, like what they're focused on. So if they're public in their 10Ks and their annual presentations, here's what they're focused on. Like, how do we relate it back? Having the GTM agent build out and understand what's happening in current events, what's happening on LinkedIn, what's happening across our own Salesforce or people attending webinars or people attending Interrupt, right? Or annual conference. And then how do I position, an email against kind of their interests, right? Or hand waving. And so a lot of that is done via GTM agent. And then all of our reps, we have a huge outbound culture. Everyone is outbounding every single day, every single week. It is a requirement to work at LangChain.
Yeah.
You cannot wait for inbound. There's a ton of inbound. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But outbound, as I've stated, is where you control the narrative. That is where you're actually able to help people the most.
Yeah.
And so that outbound key, and then Harrison coming in, to help with executive alignment, but certainly not at a first call person.
Probably like the bigger deals. Yeah. Makes sense. So actually on the go-to-market agent, could you explain that? I don't think we talked about that yet.
Yeah. So I will take no credit for this. But there's a gent that works at LangChain, Vishnu, and Vishnu built a go-to-market agent for us. And effectively what it does is it can look at all of these different data sources, right? So external or internal being Salesforce or, marketing campaigns, webinars, right? People that are signing up and viewing things or, could be meetups, right? Those kind of things.
Yeah.
And then there's the external capacity of it, like current events or, projects that are announced or, people saying things on LinkedIn. And so we can look at all those data sources. So fundamentally what you do, let's say if I come in as a new rep and I want to use the go-to-market agent, I go, hey, here are my list of 10 accounts or 20 accounts, right? I want you to go find out all this information and then craft emails based on individual people at XY level, C level, VP, director, manager across, AI, data, cloud, whatever it may be, right? And I want you to build out messaging that's unique to that individual against all the different data sources, internal, external. And the beauty of it is it'll come back to you and say, hey, here's what I've composed. So now you have this human in the loop function that allows you either to edit yourself, decline it, so then it'll go redo it again, or accept, then it sends the email for you.
Yeah.
Right. So the beauty of it is yes, writing the email, but is all the prep work that it takes to go out for all those different data sources, all the research you have to do, all what you have to compose to actually craft something that makes sense, right? Just saying, hey, do you have 10 minutes to talk to me isn't enough.
Yeah.
Right. Like I've looked at your book of business. I understand that, building agents is at the forefront. You have a goal of having an agent that is a concierge agent, it being, full productionized, 100% of external traffic going through with revenue goals. We could help you build that. Right?
Yeah.
That's a different story than saying, hey, can I just get 10 minutes of your time because we came out with Engine?
Yeah.
Right. And so it's really on the prep work, and then building, as a secondary, I would say like 10% of building the email that would be built from the composition of all that research.
Yeah. So you guys are using that internally. Are you going to turn that into a product and sell that?
So there's a path of where people can build them. And so, right there, it's open source, it's templatized, so you can take it and use it for your own organization. I don't think it'll be something that we sell, but it's something that many of our customers are taking.
Yeah. Sorry, so it's open source?
Yes, open source.
Okay, so it's already out there.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
Cool. Interesting. So you mentioned earlier that, AI is moving like 50x faster, or like the sales in the AI industry is moving like 50x faster than maybe like your previous companies. Why is that? Is that like durable revenue at all these companies? Because you always hear these companies are like, oh, we hit 100 million ARR in like 2 months. Yeah. Could you talk about that?
Yeah. The pace is very unique to AI. I talked about, like you said, 50x faster. It really feels like, honestly, a month is a year, in a week is a month. I mean, it's that fast. And so we have, for instance, we're all looking at everything, and we can see like, either new products or new releases or new competitors like in the space on a weekly basis, right? If not daily basis. And so it's constantly moving really, really, really fast. Yeah. And then I would also say there were board directives at many of these companies to build agents, right? To bring in AI, right? And it was at warp speed, bring something in and go, right? Which is kind of part of the problem now, which is all around like the multitude of vendors within one organization, either being duplicative potentially, right, or not.
Because they're testing what's better.
Well, it was basically like, get me AI agents. So it's like buy everything possible, but
and the teams aren't talking to each other.
Exactly. So you have different business units that are disparate, that are buying different tooling, and now you have kind of a hodgepodge of what is what, and duplicative solutions. And so I think that's one. The other thing is like, okay, we know we need to do AI. So like, if we need to do it, we need to go as quickly as possible. So what partners do we actually work with? And so then you have somewhat of like a stop go, but then you have multiple competitors like in the space as well. So you have like cloud providers coming out with stuff quickly. We have all this different competition within it, but that's something that I always talk to before I hire reps is pace. Pace here is unbelievable. I mean, it's you're at the foundational layer, right? Of the application layer of cloud, that being HashiCorp, like we're in that same way of building agents and moving them to production, right? And these agents being external facing, revenue generating, right? Production, mission critical agents. And so when you think about that, like you're becoming a bottom line of many of these massive organizations. And so because of that, there's a demand on the type of support, the type of service, right? The type of product, the functionality within the product, building functionality, based on request of buying. And so when we do these types of agreements, it's not just a sales rep or a sales leader going and doing this. We're pulling in product, engineering, support, service, all of that. So then it even more so speeds everything up to where, hey, we have to build this, we have to support this, provide service to this, engage here, all that. And so it's constantly, not to say a battle, but constantly like a force of iteration. On a daily basis.
So how long do you think this is going to last, where all these companies are just like, throwing money at it, just like,
I mean, who knows? I mean, there's already articles coming out that there's no realization of the actual money being spent, right? I can tell you I've not seen slowdown. In fact, I've seen it's moving even faster. Spend is going up. So I don't know. I'm not positive. I'm going to keep riding this. So I hope to never see the end of it, but
I'm sure like AI in general is just going to continue growing because it's obviously very valuable.
No doubt.
It's just a matter of like all these guys just dumping money in and they don't know what they're spending on.
No question. And I think that's going to be kind of part of it, which is probably one of my hot takes, and maybe jumping the gun here. But, in the beginning, many customers, that are ours or prospective customers bought many solutions. And it was all around the design of board said, get AI, bring all this in. So they get frontier models, they bring in different gateways, all the different solutions. Then you had different business units within these, big organizations that are disparate, not talking, bringing in other solutions, either open source or enterprise. And so now what we're seeing is not only a consolidation in the market, right? For instance, Cisco buying Galileo, what was it, as well as I think ServiceNow buying, I believe, Traceloop. And then, there's rumors around, other companies in the space. I'll let them speak for themselves when those come out. To then we're now actually within the organization, right? The consolidation is happening to where we actually go into customers. They're now leveraging if they weren't before, they're leveraging our open source. And they're saying, hey, why do I have, 4 of these different tools when I have this platform that follows a methodology or framework like agent development lifecycle, and it has in all of this, building and testing and deploying, and as well monitoring components, as well now governance, right, with LM Gateway. And then it's the most scalable solution with SmithDB. And in fact, they've taken me out of the trace and they've actually stuck Engine on top of it, which is the agent speeding up that flywheel. Why do I have 5 other vendors when LangChain can do all of it?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're seeing now is what I would call internal consolidation within each individual organization.
Yeah.
To where now all the disparate business units are saying, hey, yes, we actually want to use one solution, have a horizontal platform. The platform team runs LangSmith platform. They offer models via our gateway, right? They offer out how you deploy and how you observe and how you evaluate and how you prompt. And then how do I work with Engine, right? And get these different things. So I think now we're seeing more of what I would call holistic standard of a single platform horizontally where all business units then consume it.
Yeah.
And then where they can take away, say, 5 different vendors that maybe they were doing in the beginning stage. Because I think the noise of the 5 different vendors, they were getting 5 different opinions on strategy.
Yeah.
Where now they can work with, which a big company I can't name, one of the largest companies in the world told us that they see us as you have the model providers, right? So your frontier models, your open source, et cetera. You have your hyperscalers and you have LangChain. And those are the 3 components that you need to actually build out an AI first organization.
Yeah. So I'm assuming one big priority for you, for the sales team would be to lead these companies to say, hey, yeah, LangChain is that partner for us for that orchestration layer or whatever layer you guys are at. So how are you guys going to do that, or how are you doing it now? Is it just how do you do that?
I mean,
all these guys, all these like different teams at a giant company are saying, okay, now we have 5 solutions. Now we need to consolidate down to 1. Now your job, I'm assuming, is to be that one solution.
Yeah.
So how do you get them to choose you?
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways. I think number one is this is the most competitive space I've ever been a part of.
Yeah.
It's probably the most competitive space that's out there right now. Like I said, you have your open source solutions, you have your point solutions, and then you have like native cloud tooling, right? From AWS, Google. You have us, right? It's kind of like the platform play of it. So the competition is there's a lot.
Yeah.
And I think then you look at, the mighty LangChain, which, we punch over our weight, no question. I mean, we partner with those hyperscalers and we also, dethrone, if you will, them within accounts. And I think what happens is within a lot of these is that you can go to the individual application teams, right? And win them over the way of consuming our software, which is of course a part of it. But ultimately, like at an executive level and at a platform team level, right? How can you provide a platform that, is horizontal, that allows these developers or practitioners to consume it? So it's winning over the platform team, it's winning over the executive team, and then over time, right, winning over the application team or the developer practitioners to where, doing POCs, demos, right, enabling them, training them, right, getting them on board about it. And I think the biggest thing is that we give them a voice, right? So I think what is actually brought me over to LangChain, which I was really impressed with, was the engineering team. The engineering team is unbelievable. Like for instance, they built skim support within 2 weeks, right? I think that was something that, no offense to Hashi, but it was something we didn't have for about 8 years, which was a request after a year.
What was that? Sorry?
Skim support.
Oh, what is that?
So it's all, security. It's like leveraging like Azure AD. So you can leverage the same like token of Azure AD into like middleware. And so that was like a big component. But I think what we see is that we work so closely with customers that we open up our roadmap, right? And so if things are missing, of course, the demand has to be, not to say one entity. Yeah. But yeah, I think over time, like you see a lot of individuals start saying the same types of things. We build those. Yeah. Right? And I think that is a huge piece of why we win in the market. And we win over customers. Like we actually take feedback, good or bad. Yeah. Right. And we will incorporate it and we will build it. Many customers asked us, we want a gateway, built a gateway. Many customers said, hey, we may not want, full dependency on something like ClickHouse, for instance, or right. We want it to be faster. It's not fast enough. Except how do we make it faster? Okay. SmithDB, right. We built our own purpose built, database right for that. So I think that's a key piece is that we listen and we can move fast, we can build fast. So I think that's part of the partnership, right? Yeah. Yes, you're buying software, but you're really buying a partnership. Like who is going to get me to the forefront of AI ahead of all my competitors in my vertical.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what they think of. And that's what I believe we can do.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think about, for example, Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, like all these guys kind of encroaching on that, like they're building their agents SDKs. It seems like they have Anthropic just has now their managed agents provider.
Yep.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I look at us as, kind of the like vendor neutral, or the neutrality layer of AI, right? I think ultimately you're going to use every model, right?
Yeah.
You're going to use every cloud. So if you do that, you have 6 products, right?
Yeah.
Effectively, you have an Azure, GCP, AWS. You would have potentially, right, a OpenAI, an Anthropic, maybe a Mistral kind of component, so you would have that many. And so what we could do is say, hey, we'll give you one platform across all of them, right? You don't have to use the native solutions of each of those clouds or model providers. You can use any cloud you want, and you can use any model you want, including open source models or different frameworks or private cloud or on-premise data center with one, single pane of glass, if you will, as the horizontal platform being LangSmith platform.
Yeah.
And so I think that neutrality, or like Switzerland-like viewpoint, is why HashiCorp became an IPO'd company, which is why IBM probably bought them as well.
Yeah.
And I think the story is relevant here as well. It's identical.
Yeah. Are you guys going to start building your own infrastructure that you're going to let companies start using, or?
Well, you could say SmithDB is that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Right. So SmithDB is a purpose-built database. It would be a direct replacement for something like ClickHouse.
Okay. And you guys host
traces. So our SaaS version runs on it today.
Okay.
And then the self-hosted customers would be able to stand it up in their own infrastructure.
Okay, cool. Yep. Also, like back to the sales, sorry. How do you onboard new salespeople? Because this is AI, and I'm assuming they're coming from other industries.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you onboard them? How do you get them up to speed?
Yeah. So there's 2 things. Like I said, I think number one, pace is you have to just get in it, right? The pace is a lot, and I think that's probably the number one area that we need to ensure that they're comfortable with, right? So we give them 3 months of time to to figure kind of that out with obviously the education we can provide them. I think what we look at are really people who have done it, not in AI, but who have done it early stage startup. I've worked with founders, right? Have kind of understood a pace, and obviously won't be as close to this. But there's 2 things, right? There's obviously product knowledge, and then there's sales knowledge. Product knowledge is going to take time. That's just the reality of it, right? AI is different. Even coming from HashiCorp, it was similar, but it was different verbiage, right? And it took me, I don't know, maybe 2 months or so to like get used to that verbiage. And then, now to where I'm at, right, 2 years in, I can speak the fluent language.
Yeah.
So I think there's a component of that. And then there's also like how we sell, right? And so we do buddy systems internally. So I meet with, the rep weekly. We do buddy systems where a rep who's already been here as well and work with them. We have channels for these reps to actually reach out to other people. Yeah. So it's really there's no stupid question, right? It's, hey, ask it. We want to know. Don't go try to resolve this on your own. And then we have stages that we work with a company internally that has kind of like a 5-step program, if you will, of different things they need to do to be indoctrinated into the culture, into the way that we sell, how we position, right, the products, all of that. And so they go through that entire process. So fundamentally, after 3 months, right, they should be actionable. But I think what's key as, a director, which I've learned, like I said, through mentorship, is you need to be a part of that deal. You need to be a part of that process. You don't want to run it, right? You don't want to run the deal, the agreement, the calls for the rep, but you need to be a part of it. What I've seen are the best directors are on the calls, they're a part of it, but they're allowing their reps to run it, right? Yeah. Because it does them no good if I'm doing it, right? They don't learn anything. Yeah. I need them to become, right, an owner of their own domain. I need them to be able to run everything. And then to where I can, I have that trust with them that, okay, we can go as far, and then great, when you need me, I'm ready to, I'll jump in. So I think it's a collaboration. It's a partnership. Fine, there's hierarchy, but we're all in this together. Like, we're both going to pick up shovels and go dig it out. And if I have to work 15, 20 hours, let's do it. Yeah. Right. And so I think that's the difference is, yes, we have the tools to get you up and running, but I'm going to help along the way for 6 months or so, right? Get on every call with you, help out, maybe step in, won't let you fail. But it's ultimately a collaboration and a partnership. Yeah. And how does the sales team work with engineering? So you mentioned earlier, like, hey,
if a customer says they need something, we don't always build it, but sometimes we do. So how do you guys work together on that?
Yeah, that's a great thing. So we do a lot of internal documentation on requests from customers. And so you're able to like understand like the groundswell of the ask. There's obviously, customers who, pay a lot of money and those tend to be prioritized, right? For obvious reasons. But there's also areas of saying, hey, maybe we're not thinking about doing it. And all of a sudden it's like, 5 companies that are either, maybe in a startup or maybe mid-market or SMB or, major enterprise that come up with these ideas. That's like, okay, now there's 10 companies asking for it. We should build it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think there's understanding what the ask is, like what it actually does for them. Right. And then able to like build that out on a piece of paper, right? Like, whatever that may be, Notion or so forth, and demonstrate exactly what they're looking for. If we to build it, what is the outcome and who needs it, right? What are the types of customers that need it? I think LM Gateway was one of those, which, many customers said, hey, as major enterprise, we have to have something that helps on cost control, on, model access, or, just purely, access into like the tracing, so forth, and the governance layer. That was a product of that.
Yeah. What percentage of these new products would you say are kind of your customers are asking for it versus you guys just think that it's going to be important?
So almost a trick question. I think, Harrison's a visionary.
Yeah.
He sees a lot of it before it even comes. And so I think a lot of it was built on the backs of that.
Yeah.
But I also think that, maybe let's call it 50-50.
Yeah.
I also think that customer feedback is how you build great products, right? You can build products in the beginning that are opinionated, and then people obviously, grab onto those.
Yeah.
But the best products that you build are the ones where you get consensus across your customer base on what they actually need, and allow customers or give them the opportunity to help dictate kind of the positioning.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I'm not selling to myself, so I can't sell or buy what I like. I need to listen to customers, what they need and what they like, and what actually drives value. And so maybe it's a 50-50 early days, a lot of being, what first came out because they probably didn't know they needed.
Yeah.
And I would say there's still some of that today as well. Like we have managed deep agents, for instance, which is in competition with Anthropic's. And I would say as well, something like, SmithDB. It's like, hey, we want to make the product faster. We know our customers are ultimately going to ask for scale and all these things. Let's get ahead of it. Right. And then Engine was something that we completely built.
Yeah.
But certainly is going to become a request, from customers over time.
Yeah. So I'm assuming when it comes from LangChain, that's, the product team, the engineering team.
Yep.
So when they come up with that solution, how do they teach the sales team, like what they're doing, why they're doing it?
Yeah. So I think product team will come up with it. They'll talk to a subset of customers to see if it's actually worth it. They'll have them beta test it. And then obviously it's pushed out to the go-to-market, right? And go-to-market is trained on it. So we have demo days every week. We have enablement sessions every week. We have, Notion or white paper on it. And so all of that is put out before anything is ever sold, right? So everyone has full understanding of the product. They understand how it's used, what's the value of it, what versions of it are available. That being like, say, SaaS or self-hosted. As you know, SaaS always comes out before, right? Self-hosted sometimes lags just from the standpoint of, just being releases and so forth. So yeah, our sales reps, our deployed eng are all trained by product, by engineering on the products so that they can speak to it. Right?
Yeah.
The worst thing that we could do is actually come out with something, not train our people. They can't speak to it. And all of a sudden they're on their heels when customers are saying, hey, tell me more about this.
Yeah.
All right.
So I forgot, did you say earlier that on these sales calls, you'll also have engineers on them today, or?
So it depends on the call, right? So first call is always by a sales rep.
Yeah.
That's what we call discovery, right? Go and find out the use cases, develop those use cases. What's the project? What are we trying to do? What's the, the company North Star? And then deployed eng would come in when, it's a validated opportunity, that they could tailor back a demo, right, to the unique use case against like our solutions. When we bring in someone like engineering or product, that could be like roadmap based, right? Walking through our roadmap, or maybe there's some items that the customer is asking for that we want engineering and product to directly hear. Like get out of the telephone game, go straight to engineering and product. I think that's a great thing that HashiCorp did that we brought over here, is ensuring our customers understand they have a voice directly to our product and engineering teams, which I think is very unique. The other piece would be around, for instance, let's say they were having a hard time setting things up. We'll bring in our infrastructure team, our engineering team, our product teams.
Yeah.
Like, let's solve it. Right. And so we are, you know, obviously in the business as a sales team of driving revenue, but we are very much like customer service centric. Like if we worry about our customers first and foremost, if our customers are happy, they love the solutions, they're scaling, everything else is taken care of.
Yeah.
Right. But we need to ensure that we have happy customers at the end of the day.
Yeah. Cool. What differences do you see in accounts at LangChain that you can tell these guys are going to expand with us versus, you know, these guys are not getting a lot of value? Yeah.
Yeah. Usage. I obviously, yeah. If someone's using the product, you can see. I think
usage means like number of.
Consumption of entitlement. So, for instance, right, there's SaaS, so you can see like how much usage. There's egress built in the self-hosted versions where you can see the amount of usage against the entitlement that they purchased. I think the biggest thing for me is the ones who are open to enablement, to training, to services are actually the ones that grow the most. The ones who, if you will, buy the product, go on off on their own and so forth. I think those are the ones that you worry about.
Yeah.
Where they potentially become churn risk because maybe they're not engaging. You know, this is a very hard space. I think we're learning a lot. The customer's learning a lot. We're learning how to work with the customer as well. Each organization speaks their own language, right? So I think there's culture things you have to navigate, but the ones I've seen where the customers expand the most, if you will, right, are all around, are they open to enablement? Are they open to being taught? Do they want to have us come and build agents in a forward deployed manner? Do they want us to help set up the infrastructure?
Yeah.
Are they willing to introduce us to, you know, different business units, right, to help drive them to the platform team? And so we're empowering the platform team while we're training the practitioner and developers. So those are the key signals, right?
Yeah.
And then if they're there, ultimately what happens is you've created a flywheel where effectively what you're doing is you're empowering the platform team and you're training all the different business units to then go to that platform team. So in the series of enablement, in the series of ProServe and all of that, you're effectively building your expansion opportunity.
Have you noticed a difference in the companies that are asking you for those services up front versus the ones that aren't? Like, is it like a size difference? The bigger ones normally are more open to it?
That's a great question. I've seen more because I work in more of the enterprise space, so I can't speak completely to like startup commercial.
Yeah.
Just because the accounts that my team focuses on is enterprise.
Yeah.
I think within enterprise, the big accounts. I think there's a whole thing about time to value, right? And so if I'm going to go spend, you know, whatever it is, you know, millions or hundreds of thousands, I want to make sure I have value very quick, right? 2 to 3 months, right? I give myself a quarter, get it set up, get it people indoctrinated, train them up, boom. I need 9 months of actual usage, right? So I think time to value is everything. And then of course, like a successful outcome. And so how could I guarantee it? Well, if I buy services, that's going to, you know, basically create a more rapid progression of success, right? We're going to get trained by LangChain.
Yeah.
The solution's going to get set up by LangChain. Agents are going to get built by LangChain, right? And so you're kind of taking the onus off your people. You're helping to empower them because they're getting trained as well, but we're helping to expedite what may take 9 months. We can do it in 3.
Yeah.
Right. If not less. Yeah.
What kinds of value do you want to show them like immediately? Because I'm assuming there's some type of thing that you're like, hey, if we can show them this value like within the first couple months, like we know we've got them as a customer.
Yeah, I think
like when you go to them.
I think there's a couple things. So like obviously in the agent building components, like can we help them build an agent that actually works?
Are there like certain types of agents that you're like, if they do a customer service agent, they're going to see value immediately?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean that could all be around like, you know, backlog ticketing flow.
Yeah.
Could be, you know, like the concierge one, like how long do items sit in a cart?
Yeah.
Like, do they quickly go through and buy, or do they buy recommendations? Right. So like you can quantify that against different KPIs. All of these would be unique to the customer, by the way. Right. So we wouldn't essentially set those. The customer would come to us and say, here's what I'm trying to, you know, get after.
Yeah.
I would say from an internal perspective, you know, we have now where the customers are building master agents that sit across Salesforce, Workday, you know, ADP, like all these different data source entities where they can chat in natural language with that master agent and say, hey, you know, I need to find out things on, you know, what is a dentist I could go to against my insurance or, you know, I need this account and I need everything that's happened in the, you know, the history of the sale at this X account. Right. And so you'd have an agent do that. And so there's value in that. That's more about efficiency and productivity though. Right?
Yeah.
And so there's different ways of measuring it. So it's all dependent on the customer of what KPI are you after, right?
Yeah.
And then of course, ultimately, like with an external one, if it can drive revenue,
Yeah.
it takes you out of a cost center and into a revenue generator. That is an ultimate one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Are you seeing that much? Because from what I hear from other people, it's hard to quantify an ROI right now on generating revenue. So yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah. So it all depends. I think, in retail specifically, we have a lot of external customer or external agents that customers are using, like I talked about with concierge. And so you can derive value from that, right? As I talked about, if it's in customer support and you have, for instance, the agent handling, first triage,
Yeah.
like how much does that reduce into your second triage? Like that's time spent,
Yeah.
right?
So that would be like what would the exact metric be for that?
Yeah. So I would look at like the number of tickets, right? So like number of outstanding tickets, like, so
Oh,
for
that
instance,
a human is actually having to
yeah.
work on.
So like if we took, like I
That makes sense.
mentioned earlier, like Sutter Health,
Yeah.
right? So I have Cigna insurance.
Yeah.
I work with Sutter Health and my doctor primary. I pick up the phone, I call them, Sarah, right? Picks it up. They go, great. If they can handle first touch and get me to get off the phone, it's done.
Yeah.
But if I'm not satisfied, I then go to a human, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you would look at like, okay, how many times can I solve it without bringing a human in?
Yeah.
Right.
Like human touch points,
Exactly.
basically.
And so that would be an emphasis of not only like efficiency and productivity, but as well, like, does that reduce my cost? Right?
Yeah.
Maybe maybe I don't need as many people. Maybe I could reprioritize people to like something that's more revenue generating, more strategic. And actually I can have now an agent handle this, right? LangGraph does the same thing. We have a customer, Coinbase, leverages us in that exact format in the way of where the agent, can listen to the call and tell them exactly what's happening and give them recommendations of where to take the call, right? And then LangSmith reviewing all of it. So, and that's very public as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Are most of the efficiency gains or productivity increases coming from reducing the amount of human involvement in a lot of stuff?
Not all of it. I think it's also taking, for instance, like what an engineer does on a daily basis every single day.
Yeah.
And taking that task away, because if you're doing it every day, you should automate it.
Yeah.
Right? That's just what you should do. So you should stick a purpose-built agent on that, right? And have the agent do it. And so I think the goal is, if I could take, say 10 engineers, give them a product like LangSmith, give them an agent on top of it like Engine, take, maybe 4 hours or what was 7 hours of triage down to 30 minutes. What else could they do with 6.5 hours?
Yeah.
Could they go build different agents that are revenue generating? Could they be on purely revenue generating projects, like whatever that may be? And so I think when you look at that, the revenue they could generate is not necessarily coming from, if you will, LangSmith itself.
Yeah.
It's the projects that they now can work on.
Yeah.
But
the freedom time. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think there are ones as well, because you could look at, if you're tracing an agent going, hey, this model is way too expensive. Like, why are we using, the most expensive model on an internal agent?
Yeah.
We should change that out. And right. And we can look at that and obviously then incorporate the LM gateway as like the cost controlling center for the LM.
Yeah.
So there's just different ways, right, that we can help. And I think ultimately we want to give solutions to engineers to create automation within their process, but also allow them, right, to go focus on this mission critical revenue generating agents.
Yeah. Are there certain industries that you're seeing are just like pulling a lot more right now than others?
Big tech.
Yeah.
Big tech, financial, retail. I think the beauty of LangChain is that we're not verticalized. We're in every vertical.
Yeah.
Oil and gas, big tech, telecom, retail, big banks, pharma, medical, biotech. I mean, like you name it, we're in it, And so I think everyone is trying to do it. Right?
Yeah.
Everyone needs the ability, right, to build agents and how to go about it and trust the right partners and all of that. So we're trusted across a multitude of verticals. Like I talked about, 5 to the Fortune 10, about 45 to 50% of the Fortune 500.
Yeah.
Right. So all different types of verticals within that. So the ICP is limitless.
Yeah. But I would say like it might be that certain industries are going to be slower to adopt just because they are, they don't have a bunch of engineers working there. So are there certain industries, I guess you mentioned finance, big tech, that are adopting very quickly right now? And what do you think are the industries that are going to adopt more slowly, maybe like over the next couple of years? Obviously, everyone's going to adopt it. It's just going to take a while, maybe. Yeah,
it's a great question. I think right now we're in kind of a wild chase. I mean, if you ask anyone, from the cloud providers, whatnot, like medical healthcare is probably number one.
Yeah. Like what types of use cases do healthcare want?
Yeah,
I'm assuming it's not, oh, we want to replace our doctors.
No. So it would be, for instance, like there's ones where, it could be a doctor where you're meeting with a patient and you want to run down a patient history, right? And you say, hey, like I'm, as quickly as I'm going, give me a rundown of patient history. Boom. Gives you that like on your cell phone or whatnot. And so you could have that quickly. It could be also a recommendation of like, hey, what are the things I should be looking at? Or, hey, they did blood testing. They did, maybe blood testing or allergy testing, like, give me a prescriptive thing of like a summary of all the things I should be focused on and talking to them about, right? I think you could see that. I think ultimately also you're going to see agents being concierge in the way of like insurance, as well as medical, right? Where either helping you find a doctor, right? Or because of the insurance you have, like here's the doctors or providers you can work with. So, hey, agent, give me the recommendation of the doctor that's near me in the zip code 94010. That works, as a, family medicine doctor, and it's the highest regarded one, right? Like, I could say that I get one, great, I booked a doctor, right? Instead of me going through the whole list of finding everyone. So I think there's use cases not only for the actual practitioners, right, being the doctors, but as well as the people who are, trying to find doctors or trying to find services or whatnot, or get readouts from their blood. Like I use a product called Function Health. And so you do 160 biomarkers. So I just plugged it in ChatGPT and said, what are my deficiencies?
Yeah.
Because those are the vitamins I take, right?
And Claude has like a direct integration with them. Yeah.
There you go. Exactly. That's just a great way to do it, of like, in a way, like taking the doctor out of it. Because ultimately, if I'm getting 160 biomarkers, then I can go to AI and ask, what should I be taking? So I'm not taking like an IM8, for instance, like that is, the cocktail of vitamins. Do I need all of them? Am I having too much of one thing that I don't need, right? And so I think that's another, great use case for the general public to use.
Yeah. Interesting. What is finance doing with all this stuff?
Yeah. So finance is a lot of internal, it would depend. I mean, we have many of the, largest credit card processing companies, many of the large banks are customers of ours.
Mostly for customer support.
There's customer support. There's internal employee support, probably as much as I can say on them.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I think a lot of that, many of them built like kind of like the internal RAG model of like, blank name assist, where it would cover all HR, IT documentation, right, for their internal employees. Payments is a big one now, right? The credit card processors are looking at agents with payments, right? So there's a world where eventually we're going to get to where if you use a credit card, right, whoever's it may be, and you have a lot of history of payment, right, of buying certain things, of booking hotels, of restaurants, of vacations you go on, that you could go to the agent and say, hey, I want to go to Miami. Can you book hotels, restaurants, activities, excursions based on my payment history?
Yeah.
And it will go find all of it. And if you agree to it, you click accept and it books everything for you and it pays for it.
Yeah.
Right. Because what they can do is effectively tokenize your, 16-digit, 18-digit number.
Yeah. I think Stripe's doing something there, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Stripe, Visa came out with it, MasterCard as well.
Oh yeah. You mentioned there's like a Visa partnership that you guys are working on. Can you talk about that?
Just around that.
Yeah.
So e-commerce payments.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
And so Public, they came out with it about a year ago. And so it's exactly that, right? Taking your history of all the payments you've made and then allowing an agent to, in a concierge way, book it for you. And then bringing in human in the loop of approving basically the itinerary that it put together, but also approving the purchase of it, right? To leverage your credit card. I think the last thing everyone wants is for to build an itinerary and not ask you to buy it, right?
Yeah.
Because then who knows how much you spent? Is it the highest of high things or is it middle, right?
Yeah.
But I think the interesting thing is having the ability to have, like an agent build all this against what you look for, rather than having like a third party, traveler agency that doesn't know you, doesn't know how you spend, your downtime or relax.
Yeah.
This agent can fundamentally just take exactly what you've done in your past and then project it. Of course, I would say if it looked at my 20s, it would be different than my 30s, but my 30s a little bit more R&R, my 20s were a little bit more go. So I would request it to stay out of my 20s and purchasing.
Yeah. So what exactly was the partnership? What was is Visa building the agent?
Yeah. So it's in joint tandem of building the agent with LangGraph, right?
And so where is it? Like whose product is it?
Well, it effectively would be theirs in conjunction. We'd be building it together on our open source that they could offer out as a template to other, e-commerce, companies,
Yeah.
right, that wanted to leverage like a templatized e-commerce payments agent out of their library, right?
So they're making it possible to do it because right
Exactly.
now an agent is not allowed to probably touch
And
any Visa cards or
it's
anything.
a very hard thing to do,
Yeah, yeah.
right? I mean, it's also a scary thing to do. Like you're giving it an authority to leverage your credit
Yeah,
card.
yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole thing around like building on the open source and building an agent together, and then that being templatized and offered out right to others within the payments ecosystem
Yeah.
that they could leverage on for themselves.
Yeah. And I'm sure people will also be afraid of connecting their credit cards to the agents for a little bit, but it reminds me of like,
Yeah,
when like the internet came out, people are like afraid of putting their credit cards online.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
And as long as there's a human in the loop functionality
Yeah.
that allows you to approve a decline,
Yeah.
it should be fine.
Yeah.
But of course, I think we've all heard of there's instances where agents have taken over. I think like
deletes
like
a database.
Replit, right? Exactly. So
Cool. So I had a question about the structure of the sales team at HashiCorp. What was the size of the sales team?
my goodness, I think we were close to probably 800 people out of
Wow.
2,500.
And so are you noticing, I'm assuming that like revenue per employee is much higher at LangChain than it was at HashiCorp.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not without getting into it, right?
Yeah.
I think it is right now because you have a lot of revenue, and obviously we're building out the team, and
Yeah.
AI had an incredible viral moment, right? As I talked about, people wanted to buy AI as fast as possible, et cetera. And I think we were right at the forefront of that to help customers to which is why I was taking 40 calls a day
Yeah.
in my first year. So I would agree with that without getting into the numbers. I think, that the semblance is that you probably don't need as big of teams quite yet, right? Whereas, at a company like HashiCorp or other companies, like you had this whole position around, say, like majors and the strat and enterprise and commercial, et cetera. I think for now, right, as you're building out these accounts, you're landing into them, you're doing like the first initial expand. So maybe you're in year 2 or year 3 of that. I think as you tend to get more of those, then you start getting down to where reps have 2 or 3 accounts. They specialize in it. They move into a strat role, a strategic role. But I think for right now, everyone's seen in the same domain as enterprise, right? We're building the company out. We're in our 2nd year of selling, right, ever.
Yeah.
And so we're well ahead of, many companies. We're growing at an unbelievable rate, but we're also understanding that you never want to overhire, and you never want to hire to where if there's no work for the people to do or no actual value they can get, you could run into a problem of attrition, right? And so you have to balance that.
Yeah.
Like, how do I bring in someone? How can I make them actionable? Make sure that they can bring in revenue and actually feel valued and love the culture and want to be here, and they're driving revenue. Instead of in 9 months, do they just leave?
Yeah.
Right, because they can't, right? Or I haven't supported them correctly, or I haven't enabled them, right? And when you get to that attrition standpoint, that doesn't look good, right? The market sees that.
Yeah.
And that's then where you can have an issues of now hiring people versus keeping them.
Yeah.
And so I think when you look at hires, there's a full validation of understanding, can this person do it, et cetera. And then it's how do we help them become actionable and ensure that we can retain them, by whatever means possible.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you guys are using a go-to-market agent inside of your workflows.
Yep.
How do you think go-to-market at LangChain or other companies is going to evolve over the next year or two?
Although we have the go-to-market agent, we still have an SDR team.
Yeah. And
So
what's the difference between the SDR team and, I guess, is that different from your team?
So yeah. So I run like the West Coast enterprise team.
Okay.
And then we have a commercial team, then we have the SDR team. And so the go-to-market agent is for everyone to use, right?
Yeah.
Help you, upload all your accounts. Let's do all the data source research. Let's build out emails. Let's send them out, right? And then we have SDRs that are assigned to each of the teams, right? So those SDRs being actual humans, right, are going in and doing the same kind of thing. Like, hey, let's say, for instance, I'm a rep there and I have 30 accounts, right? I'm really all I could probably focus on are, 15 to 20, and I got a back 10. That back 10, I'm going to give to the SDR team. I want you guys to go outbound and find opportunities within that. My middle 10, I'm going to give to the go-to-market agent and have it outbound because I want to control that back. That's probably like my Bs.
Yeah.
And then the A's, I'm doing everything. I'm outbounding everything. I'm looking at it all, right? So you kind of break it down in that fashion where A's are your top, biggest revenue generators. I have to control the messaging. I have to control the narrative.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's coming from me. I'm not going to, spam.
The go-to-market person.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I'm the rep, I will have my A's. I'm writing all of the emails. I'm customizing them all. I'm looking at 10Ks, annual presentations. I'm going to do a manual process to this. because these are my biggest revenue generators. Then I have my Bs that could be, but having the go-to-market agent is a great way to get messaging out and break into these. And then the back, say 10 of the 30, why not have the SDR team, right? Being the human SDR team.
Yeah.
Now go and start outbounding on these to build me more pipeline. So if you think about it, you've not only simplified the fashion of it, but you've created a 3x parallel on different people so they don't get exhausted by it, but also great outcomes, right? So what we've seen is we've seen a lot of great success with go-to-market agent, and now we're seeing a ton of success with the SDR team.
Yeah.
And of course, right, the bloodline of the reps that we bring on at LangChain are you outbound.
Yeah.
And you outbound daily, and you outbound on Saturdays and Fridays and, and so forth. So I think when you bring it all together, right, you've created an incredible tsunami of building pipeline.
So what is the difference in the job description of an SDR versus a go-to-market person?
Yep. So SDR is fundamentally looking at building qualified leads. Or qualified opportunity, right? So they're outbounding cold. They're bringing in, interest that is cold, not inbound, just completely cold. So either by phone calling, in-mails on LinkedIn or emails, right? And so they'll bring those as a qualified opportunity, being they will take the first call, they'll qualify it in or out, right? If it then passes up to a rep, right? An enterprise rep. That enterprise rep will digest the notes of why it's qualified, take the call and understand, okay, what are the projects? What are we working on, et cetera. Versus, I think you mentioned like the difference of go-to-market. So on the go-to-market side, if it being commercial or enterprise, you own the entirety of the cycle. So you own it from inbound or outbound, right? The demos, the POCs, the sale, and the post-sale.
Yeah.
And meaning the renewal. And then all the pro-serve. So you own everything, right? You're a quarterback of that. You own your own domain. You own the account. And so you need a quarterback. You need to know when to pull in product, when to pull in engineering, when do I pull in support, services, right? And so it's really unique to where like HashiCorp was in the same model and many others as well, but it's unique in the way of like, how do I understand when I should pull someone in and not waste someone's time, right? And so you have to understand that over time of like, can I handle it all myself?
Yeah.
Can mean the deployed eng do it, who's my counterpart on the technical side, or do we need someone, from product or engineering, or maybe Harrison, or maybe Ankush Golov, right, our CTO, right, who built SmithDB. And so that there is some expertise in knowing when to pull in the correct people. So hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah. I'm not super familiar with sales, so
no. I was trying to give it more elongated. So.
Yeah. Thanks. So what part of that process do you think over the next 2 years? So right now you have the go-to-market agent that handles one part of it. What would you want other agents to handle of that process?
Well, I'm the funniest guy with this because, and I probably shouldn't say it, but I'm the guy that uses, like ChatGPT as his Google.
Yeah.
But I write all my own emails. Right. So I don't necessarily leverage AI across my whole life, which is funny coming from somebody who literally works in AI, but I see the power of it. I'm a little old school in the way of, of the iPhone. I use it in its simplicity way. I send email. I text people. I call people. Maybe I go on Twitter, right? X, but I'm not out there, taking pictures of trees and whatnot and taking the full capabilities of talking to Siri and everything. Right. So I may not be the best person to talk about that. So I do believe in like engineers, having purpose, and I believe in sales reps having purpose. So I'm not sure that you could agent your way through all of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously this is coming from a biased perspective as well. I think there is criticality in the way of understanding the human element. I still think there's a very human element to selling.
Yeah.
Right. I think the process of getting information, yes, an agent can do that. The process of delivering that information via email, in-mail, yeah, an agent can do that. Hopping on a Zoom and selling it, no way. Being in person and handshaking, not a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, I think those are core areas that will never go away, as in the same thing, like a plumber, an electrician. Like, I don't think we'll ever have, an agent that would fundamentally, that I would trust to say, hey, please rewire my house.
Yeah.
Probably not going to do that. I'm going to stay with the tried and true, blue collar individuals.
Yeah.
And the same with plumbing. Right. And so I look at it as an agent can help either automate your life, right, or help you work on something that's actually revenue generating, and so it's how do we empower, right? The platform is, but how do we empower the practitioners and developers to really focus on things that could change the bottom line of a company, but not take away their job? Like, how do we reprioritize them into, individuals that become like the experts in their domain, but are focused on purely revenue generation, right? Or whatever the most strategic line item is right at the company, rather than a day-to-day, everything you do every single day, right? That I don't think anyone wants that. So
yeah. Are there any differences you see in selling medium-sized businesses, startups versus the enterprises?
Yeah.
I guess you're mostly focused on enterprise, but
great question. There's absolutely. So when I first started, the startup SMB mid-market, right? We're looking at solve for this one specific issue, observability. Just solve for that, right? Whereas major enterprises go, hey, I don't want to have 5 different tools, right? That solve for observability, then one for evaluations, or one for deployment, or one for LM gateway, or whatever it is, right? Or prompt engineering. And there are tools for each individual one. I want a platform, right? So major enterprises look at platforms. That's what they're used to. They want a horizontal platform that they can create standards and, swimming lanes for each of the disparate business units to work from. And they can create data sovereignty within that. So they can create a workspace per business unit. So they can have separations and guidelines and guardrails. Whereas the startups are like, hey, I need observability, give me, lowest cost, give me an open source tool, whatever, and that's fine. And that was in the beginning. I would say now what's happening is everyone's looking at a platform. Everyone, even those startups, I won't mention them, are now saying, hey, we actually should go in the direction of you. We've actually begun to use more LangGraph and deep agents and want first, party support and all that into LangSmith platform. And we want this platform because we have so many different teams running different solutions or different versions. And what we really need is organized chaos, right? We need to be organized. We have standardized patterns, and then we just need them to go, but under the guidelines that we've set. And so I think you'll see a lot of times within these organizations that because of what they did in bringing all the different solutions over time and so forth, or allowed their teams to pick different solutions. Ultimately, what you've done is you've opened up your security blast radius to an infinite mode that you have no control of.
Yeah.
And so now you're figuring out, well, where's this agent? What agent has access? Does this agent have access to this? Or who's even interacting with this agent, right? And so that's where I mentioned the internal consolidation. I think you'll be seeing that a lot more over the next year.
Yeah. What other predictions do you have over the next year?
I think one already, I know we were going to film this probably 6 weeks ago. Memory was going to be a big one.
Yeah.
Owning your own memory, I think, is number one. I saw recently that Claude managed agents, they actually switched that to where you can own your own memory. I think they saw that pretty quickly. Memory is the gold. It's the new gold. It's the memory that you have of if you're retail, of all the transactions that are being made, or the customer purchasing path, or how they go about it, or what they buy. That is really IP. Like, it is very valuable IP, and you need to own that. Whereas if you were to give that to like OpenAI or Anthropic, right, they're going to leverage that data. So I think that's one. I talked about kind of the consolidation on the internal. I think you're also going to see the external consolidation, which we're already seeing. Galileo with Cisco. I believe Traceloop with ServiceNow. I think there's another one that's a point solution that I've heard rumors of, and I'll let them speak for themselves, that is potentially going to be bought here in the next 3 months. And so I think you'll see a lot of consolidation from that perspective. But ultimately, I think my biggest one is going to be around the internal consolidation tech debt piece, to where a lot of products were bought. There's either duplicative product, no value of the product, or there's better product, right? And then ultimately, I would say probably my hottest one would be that observability is table stakes. If you're buying observability tools, like, you're not buying the right thing. You should be buying an improvement or an iteration tool like LangSmith platform that actually allows you to leverage something like Engine that constantly iterates and helps you through the pattern of ADLC of, building and testing and deploying and monitoring, and then getting out of the traces and having the agent called Engine give you recommendations and improvements and different things that you can do to enhance, right, your tracing. So I think observability is table stakes. Everyone has it. It simply means that the light is either red or green. Like, if that is the value you're providing as an organization, good luck. It really needs to be fundamentally, how can I improve your workflow? How can I provide value? Right? How can I help you iterate quickly? How can I create greater efficiencies, greater productivity? And I think that's where we're, if you will, rebranded away from observability into more of the improvement, the iteration, the enhancement, by empowering our customers with this product.
Yeah. And that's improving the agents, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Constantly improving the agents without having the human, always have to sit on top of it from the standpoint of like, is the light green or red?
Yeah.
Right. We're providing more than just monitoring it. We're actually providing action.
Yeah.
recommendations, enhancements, improvements, iterations that a human user can take by getting them to more the 10,000 foot view away from, carrying the shovel within the trace itself.
Yeah. I think we talked about this before we started recording.
Yep.
But could you explain how are people trying to improve agents today? And then exactly okay, what is Engine doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think people are trying to improve agents. I think one, cost is obviously huge. It's all about cost, latency, accuracy, right?
Yeah.
Are the biggest things. What is the output of what you desire, right? Because each model requires a different prompt, right? So you have to build a prompt for each model. And then you have different use cases, right? And then if it's internal, what are you focused on, right? You're probably focused on accuracy. You don't care about latency because time is fine. And then, cost, obviously, that's a big one. You do not want to run up a big internal bill, which I think we talked about. We saw Uber's in the news and many others. I think they spent a year of AI spend in 3 months.
There was somebody who was like, "Oh, we spent 500 million in a month on accident."
Yeah. So I think that's a piece of it. And then I think there's actually getting these agents to become, production ready, mission critical, revenue generating, right? And so constant iteration, right? And everyone has a level that they want to hit, right? Maybe they want 90% accuracy, right? So if we're at 88, we're still not at 90. So how do we get to 90, right? And so we constantly iterate with them. And then there's, to your point, is leveraging something like Engine, right? So Engine is effectively spinning the flywheel of ADLC, right? Engine is speeding up the build phase, the testing phase, the deployment, and the monitoring phase, right? By looking at all the traces that are coming from it, because fundamentally the agent is not really in code. The trace is what's telling you what's wrong with it. So the heartbeat of the agent is effectively the trace, right? Which tells you, the amount of latency or the accuracy, or is the LM correct? Was there an error in the retrieval step or the research step? And so if I can take all of that and I have now 1 billion traces, I can stick Engine on top of it, and then I can go to bed. And kind of like in the analogy of Pee Wee Herman's movie, if maybe I'm dating myself a bit, but he'd wake up and all of a sudden, the toaster would go, the sink would go on, clothes would appear on him, right? And it was kind of his life was automated in a fashion that was physical. It's in the same way. So you could go to bed that day and Engine is working overnight to find ways to improve, ways to enhance, problems, errors. You wake up, turn your laptop on, boom. Your screen is not the trace view. It is Engine, which is the new UI, to where it shows, instead of you the trillions of traces, it shows you what you really need to focus on, right? The errors, what I can improve on, how to improve evaluators, how to improve data sets. And so that helps speed up this whole entire flywheel. So it's constantly moving, which I think also helps create greater efficiency and productivities with our engineers.
Yeah. So then what products are going to be after Engine? What do you guys think?
That's a great question. Not one for me to answer. I will say, I think there's, things in line that, Harrison and team and engineering team and so forth think about. But I will tell you, it's probably going to be something that, our customers are going to want and bring up.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a great partnership with many that we have, like I talked about, 5 of Fortune 10, 45 to 50% of the Fortune 500, many within the startup realm and market SMB, and many of the hot tech companies that we call tastemakers. Those types of companies across the board are going to help, point us in the direction of the type of products we need to build. But of course, we do have as well the vision of Harrison and Ankush to help guide us. So I think Interrupt was a great release schedule. I'll probably stop there. And I'm sure there's going to be many more coming, but Interrupt was a fantastic release around Engine, around LM Gateway, SmithDB, our purpose-built database, managed deep agents, LangSmith sandboxes, right? So many great releases and many things that customers wanted.
Yeah. This actually reminded me. So you mentioned earlier that forward deployed engineering is becoming a big thing.
Yep.
So it kind of seems contradictory to the Engine platform, because it seems like Engine is trying to do what these FDEs would do. Am I thinking about that right or wrong?
So Engine is basically the agent would have to be built, right? So Engine would effectively, once you have the traces, then it would spin that flywheel around the traces. The forward deployed Eng could be where they're going in and helping set up the infrastructure. Like if you want to run a self-hosted version, setting up all the infrastructure. It could be staff augmentation to build the agents via our open source frameworks.
Giving them ideas.
Yeah. And it could be ideas. It could be the partnership collaboration, right? And so I think there's different things that they're focused on. Ultimately is how do we guide the customer in the way of like best practice, industry trends. Because when you work with the type of customers we work with, those that are at the forefront of AI, those are in the middle, at the beginning, we get a full lens of all the different types of customers. And then we're able to actually present that to the market of like, these are what leading, AI companies are doing.
Yeah.
Right. And it could be leading in each vertical. It could be, this is what the leading company in healthcare is doing. This is what the leading telecom company is doing.
Yeah.
The leading car manufacturer, right? And so we can verticalize that message because we do work with those customers. So it's not something that we're making up. We actually work with them. We're in the infrastructure with them. We're helping to build agents. We're setting up all the infrastructure. We're helping them realize value and ultimately getting them to what they deem a successful outcome. And that's the difference of LangChain versus the other point solutions or competitors that are out there.
Yeah. And do you see these FDEs are going to be part of the sales process then? If they're going to be building the agents, then, they get in front of the customer and say, hey, you guys are a healthcare company. These are the types of things that we see.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep. I would say they could be in a pre-sales manner, more than likely post-sale, to where they become part of the services component of going in and, setting things up or validating architecture, infrastructure, building agents. Ultimately, right, when we build agents and the agents get consumed and you trace those agents, that's how, LangChain makes money.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we can expedite that fashion, allow them to build or to drive revenue for themselves, right, help their bottom line.
Yeah.
Like if we can drive revenue for a customer, right, the partnership works. We both at the end of the day grow together, right? So the goal is to grow together. So how can we expedite the process of you building agents that are worthy of putting externally, right? Not just an agent. Like, is it battle tested? Is it built the right way, right? Like, can it actually be used? Not just an agent, right? And so I think there's definitely a difference between those two, just to make sure that was clear. It's not just pushing an agent out. It's ensuring that this agent can actually work. It does what it says it will, right? And it works in that same fashion. And then it's following all the infrastructure and architecture best practices that we've come to know over the last 3-4 years.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah. Thanks again for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Of course.
I would shout out LangChain. We're a growing company. We're now 250 going to 500. So we have 250 people to bring on. So if you're looking at AI specifically in infrastructure, we'd love to bring you on.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you.